All right. At this time, we will begin our presidential candidate forum. With the exception of Mac, can we please clear the stage? Oh wait, no, never mind. They can't be on stage at the same time. Okay, never mind. All right. So in February, we sent an invitation to all declared candidates by mail and by email, and included any candidates that announced through the second week of April. Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard and John Delaney accepted our invitation, and I'm going to let Colin call us our first forum candidate.
Hello, everyone. Colin Tiernan. Very honored and gracious to introduce Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, the honorable woman. A lot to us. Her voice has been very powerful. It keeps growing. The moral clarity she brings to the call for no more wars is something that we're all very, very thankful for. So please come up, Congresswoman Gabbard.
Members, if you have a veteran-related question for our Q&A session of the forum, please submit a comment card to the front, and you will be called on to ask your question. Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, you have 3 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you very much. Aloha, my fellow veterans. It's great to be here with all of you to see how you're taking a leadership role to make sure that our voices, veterans' voices, are heard in this elections process, and that the needs of our veterans are met and addressed. I don't have to tell you how frustrating it is to see how, time and time again, there are examples of how far away our government has gotten from the vision our founders had for us, of a government truly of, by, and for the people. Instead, what we see in Washington too often is a government of, by, and for self-serving politicians or greedy corporations or the rich and powerful. What happens as a result? We, the people, suffer. People are left struggling and suffering and left behind. The values that are at the heart of every service member, every single one of you here, those values of service above self are what we need so desperately in this country. To have leaders who are actually putting the well-being of the people of this country at the forefront, above all else. It is those values that I seek to bring to the White House, to serve as your president and commander-in-chief, and to restore the principles of respect and honor and integrity to the presidency. I'm still serving in the Army National Guard today. I've been serving for over 16 years. I'm the first female combat veteran ever to run for president. And in Congress, I served on the Foreign Affairs and the Armed Services Committees for over 6 years. So like you, I know the importance of our national security, and I know the cost of war. I've seen it firsthand. As your President and Commander-in-Chief, I will end wasteful regime change wars that have taken far too many lives, that have made our country less safe. I'll work to end this new Cold War that we're in with ever-escalating tensions between the United States and nuclear-armed countries. Work to end this nuclear arms race and take the trillions of taxpayer dollars that have been coming out of our pocket, going to pay for waging these wasteful wars. Take those trillions of dollars and invest them in serving the needs of the American people. Things like health care for all, education, protecting our environment, ensuring clean water for every American in this country, rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. There are so many needs, and we've got to get our priorities straight in this country. There's a lot of work that we need to do to honor the service of our veterans. I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of hearing politicians who pay us lip service on Veterans Day, who say thank you for your service, and who then turn around the very next day and advocate for or vote for sending more of our brothers and sisters to these wasteful, counterproductive wars that do not serve the interests of the American people, nor do they serve the interests of the people in the countries where we wage these wars. I'm sick and tired of hearing politicians say thank you for your service and then turn around the next day and say, well, when you come home with injuries, both seen and unseen, you're not allowed to get medicinal marijuana. The only option that you have is highly addictive opioids. Time and time again, whether we're talking about marijuana, homelessness, mental health benefits, all of the other issues that we face as veterans, it's time to get a leader in the White House who truly understands our needs and who will have your back. You know that I will do that for you. Thank you all so much. Over.
One of the things that we've, as a caucus, would like to hear from you is your top veteran-related priorities once you're elected to the White House. And again, as Robert said, you're clear to this.
The first and most important thing is recognizing that the most important responsibility that the president has is to serve as commander-in-chief. So rather than continuing the status quo, I think it's essential that as commander-in-chief to know that I will stop creating more of these wasteful wars that cause so much pain and injury and loss of life to our veterans. We can look at the issues that still exist within the VA. It's a bureaucracy, unfortunately, that still serves the bureaucracy rather than actually meeting that mission of putting veterans first. So whether we're talking about healthcare, disability benefits, truly affordable housing, mental health care, care provided to those who have been forced on these highly addictive opioids and then have no other recourse as they seek recovery, these are all major issues that must be addressed to meet that mission of the VA, to actually serve our veterans and honor their great sacrifice.
All right, so how many comment cards do we have out there so far?
Can you remake the announcement?
All right, so once again, hold them up so everyone can see. If you have a question, please submit it on the comment cards, bring them up to the front. In the meantime, let's take one question from the mic. So anyone have a question? Let's start with, recognize Richard Valdez to come up to the front. Veteran Richard Valdez, what is your question?
My question is, when are we going to start training our veterans before they transition out of the military? Reintegrate that in the
Thank
society.
you, Richard. Thank you for your service. There are pilot programs that are currently underway to do just that, that we need to make uniform across our military. I know in the Army there's a program called Soldier for Life that makes it a command priority, which those of us who served, whether as enlisted or as officers, know that unless the command is making it happen, then it doesn't really much matter what anyone else says. So they make it a command priority a year out from when a service member is scheduled to lay down the uniform to see what kind of job they'd like to get afterward, make sure that they have the training and education, and actually link up with the private sector employer that they can transition directly into. It's those kinds of hands-on approaches that we need to make sure that that transition is seamless, going from wearing the uniform and entering civilian life. There's a lot of opportunities out there, and we've got to get the message out to employers across this country that hiring veterans should be at the top of their list. Because our veterans bring a huge amount of experience, work great under pressure, have amazing leadership background, and work as a member of a team, putting the mission first, putting service above self. Those are the attributes and qualities that I know every employer should want, and hiring veterans has got to be number one. Thank you.
We set a couple of rules for this, and it's got to be a veteran or foreign policy related question. So I'm asking you guys to keep it to this, but I'm going to ask this. It's a little mixture. Medicare for all would help everyone, but do you believe veterans' health care should be, and I can't read the last word, prioritized?
We don't have to wait for anything to happen, any legislation to pass, to make sure that our veterans are getting the health care that they need.
Yeah.
It's gone on for far too long that we hear empty promises. We hear veterans are going to be made a priority, but then you hear threats of privatization and actually making it harder for our veterans to get that care that they need. There are so many stories that I could share with you of veterans who live in my district in Hawaii who have dealt time and time again with doors slammed in their face, ultimately when they can't get the care that they need the most. We had a Vietnam veteran in my district who I had known for years, but he happened to call me on my cell phone one day when he was on the verge of having a heart attack. And he was in the emergency room at the hospital closest to him, trying to get the emergency surgery, heart surgery that he needed. But he was being told by the bureaucracy at the VA clinic, no, you're not authorized to get that surgery there. We're going to have to send over an ambulance to come and get you, when his doctor is telling him you will not survive the trip to get to the VA hospital. And he was one person who was stuck in this bureaucracy of paperwork rather than saying, hey, we've got to save this guy's life and know that the VA will cover the cost of that care. So we were able to help him get that. We were able to help save his life. But how many more of our veterans are having to struggle through and fight through this bureaucracy rather than, once again, making sure the VA is meeting its mandate to care for our veterans?
One of the main focuses of our caucus is bringing home deported veterans. What will you do for deported veterans?
There's two major things we have to address here. One is the fact that we have far too many veterans, people who've put their lives on the line for this country, who have been deported out of the country that they have sacrificed their lives for. We've got to bring our veterans home. And the second thing we've got to address is the fact that many veterans who may not be citizens, or service members who are not citizens, they're not educated about what their rights are, what their opportunities are. And even those who apply for citizenship, we're seeing now, are getting rejected at higher numbers than those who are not veterans. This dishonors their service, their sacrifice, the sacrifices that are made by their family members. It is a slap in the face for every single one of them to go and deploy, to go and to fight in these wars that they had no role in making a decision on, to come home, to apply for citizenship, to be a citizen of the country that they fought for, and then to have the door slammed in their face. That's got to change.
Congresswoman, your next question is, what are your plans to address climate change and the transition to green energy? This isn't a veteran-related question. To green energy, do you have a plan to help with green economy jobs?
Vets. He's asking about vets with the green economy. Veteran jobs.
I think that the question was about veterans having entry into the green economy. This is something that affects all of us. So veterans, non-veterans, dealing with the climate crisis that's before us impacts all of us. It impacts all of us here at home. It impacts all of us who live on this planet. So we've got to make it a priority to make the kinds of investments and bold changes in our policies to get off of fossil fuels, to end the big subsidies that we are still paying out to the tune of over $30 billion every year to big oil companies, and invest in a green, renewable energy economy. Invest in training a workforce to include veterans who are transitioning out of service and into the civilian life to work in that economy, to set us up for a better future. We also have to work with other countries. We can't be under the illusion that we alone here in the United States can solve this climate crisis. It's going to take us working with leaders of other countries, building those relationships based on cooperation and the recognition that climate change and the threat that it brings impacts every single person on this planet. Only by doing that can we really make the change that we need to see.
Our last question, and I think it's a good one. Would you sign on as a co-sponsor for legislation to create a Department of Peace Building? And what the importance of peace on Earth? Could you speak to that a little bit? Thank you.
I think it's a great idea to have a Department of Peace to remind us of the kind of work that we should be doing as a leader in this world. As a leader in this world, we should not be doing what this administration is doing and pushing for regime change in Venezuela, pushing for regime killings in Iran, using our military as Saudi Arabia's armed forces rather than recognizing that our service members sign up to protect and defend the United States of America and the American people. This requires strong leadership and the right kind of leadership, and a recognition about what our mission is and the great sacrifices that our service members make. The experience that I bring to this job of President and Commander-in-Chief best equips me to fulfill that promise, to be able to execute that mission, to make sure that our troops are only sent on missions truly worthy of their sacrifice and only as a last resort, seeing the value and the necessity of diplomacy and dialogue, understanding that unless we have the courage to meet with both adversaries and friends, the only alternative is war. Thank you all so much for having me here today. Thank you. They told me I got 2 more minutes. I'm going to take advantage of it. We all know what the warrior ethos are. These warrior ethos that are ingrained in every one of us from the time we go in on our first day in basic training or boot camp and throughout our time in service. In service to our country, in service to our people. Which is why it's so important for us to continue to stand up, to continue to live out those warrior ethos of always placing the mission first. I will never quit, and I will never leave a fallen comrade. Those ethos that we live when we wear the uniform continue even for those who have laid the uniform down. It is that mission that we are charged with, to stand up for one another, to stand up for peace, to stand up against costly, counterproductive regime change wars, to stand up for diplomacy and dialogue, and to stand up and make sure that we hold leaders accountable in this country. To hold them accountable, that they are fulfilling their mandate to serve the American people first and foremost. This is my commitment to you, that I will continue to carry those values, those ethos with me to the White House, to the presidency, to serve you as Commander-in-Chief, and honor the service and great sacrifice that every one of you, every one of our service members and their families make. Thank you all so much. Aloha.
Tulsi!